Hey, we're back. And most famously, Roosevelt was known as big stick diplomacy. This was sort of defined by this little paragraph here. Probably no greater nation in the world is so anxious for peace as we are. There is not a single civilized power which has anything whatever to fear from aggressiveness on our part. All we want is peace. And towards this end, we wish to be able to secure the same respect for our rights from others which we are eager and anxious to extend to their rights in return, to ensure fair treatment to us commercially and guarantee the safety of the American people. Our people intend to abide by the Monroe Doctrine and to insist upon it as the one sure means of securing the peace of the Western Hemisphere. The Navy offers us the only means of making our insistence upon the Monroe Doctrine anything but a subject of derision to whatever nation chooses to disregard it. We desire the peace which comes as of right to we desire the peace which comes as of right to the just man armed, not the peace granted on terms of ignominy to the craven and the weakling. It is not possible to improvise a navy after war breaks out. The ships must be built and the men trained long in advance. So basically he's saying that we want to have peace through strength, and because other nations will know not to mess with us, and we need to build a navy now because that is what the world respects, and so we need to get on that. So he's speaking to Congress about what needs to happen, saying that we need to get some legislation in place to be building up our Navy resources right now. One of the best ways or best examples of Roosevelt and sort of his big stick diplomacy, one that in some ways was a really celebrated aspect of his presidency and also a bit heavy-handed by, especially by modern standards, was that of the Panama affair. The United States was now fully very strong on both coasts and growing all the time, and so they were looking for a way to shorten the water route between the two coasts. That would be really, really useful to have a canal there through the middle of between North and South America, and so they are thinking that there would be time to take over a route to build a canal there. And so Roosevelt is looking for a means to build a canal and would like to do so through that's an area of territory that was currently in control of Colombia, but he's looking at two possibilities. You could either seize Panama or by force, or aid a revolt and then allow a new government to be in place that would be more friendly to U.S. terms, and so they go with the latter option. The France had already been trying to make this happen. The people had dreamed about it for centuries. There have been failed attempts, but now it was going to happen. And so what they ended up doing was that they helped organize and finance a revolution in Panama that was controlled by Colombia at the time. And so the U.S. lands troops to maintain order. And essentially, the U.S. forces were there to prevent Colombian forces from suppressing the rebellion of Panama. The order from Washington was, in the interest of peace, make every effort to prevent Colombian government troops at Colon from proceeding to Panama City. So basically, you're just there to block their passage, and we're going to have a transfer of power there in Panama. And so 3 days later, Roosevelt recognized Panama as an independent nation. And so they got the deal for the Panama Canal that the Colombians had not been interested in. And so in 1904, the treaty with Panama allowed the U.S. authority over the canals in perpetuity, as if it were sovereign territory of the United States, and it would maintain that. Eventually, the U.S. will give that back to Panama. A lot of our ships these days are so large they don't fit through the canal, anymore. But if you look in the videos below, there's a quick video from the BBC about the Panama Canal. You can see a bit more about that. But it was a monumental engineering effort. That's an interesting one if you just want to read about an engineering project and all the challenges that went into it. That was an amazing one. This is the map that you'll see there. But its significance was that it literally connected the two oceans in a lot more rapid fashion than was previously possible. The U.S. Atlantic and Pacific fleets could now freely exchange ships. 1,058 ships traveled the canal in the first year alone, and Roosevelt saw it on par with the Louisiana Purchase or the U.S. taking over the Western United States. He saw it in those kind of terms, but it was very symbolic of the American activism in foreign policy. Maybe even not worrying about the legal ramifications of it so much as the end result was important at this point. And also, it was a deepening U.S. influence over Latin America at that point was part of the negative side of those efforts. Britain is going along with it, even though some other countries are grumbling about it a bit. But generally, the U.S. is still coming out on top with all of this. And the U.S. is continuing to push on the world stage. One way that they do that, and this is during TR's second term here, is the Great White Navy. The U.S. has been building up its navy, especially at the request of TR, and so by 1907, the U.S. is second only to the Britain in the strength of its navy, and so Roosevelt decides to paint the navy white and sail it around the world. 16 battleships, all painted white, 14,000 sailors, sending this fleet on a circumnavigation of the world to show off U.S.'s strength. And so he goes down to South America and then over to New Zealand and Australia and all the way around the world. You can see there. Making its way around the world. Around South America, across up the U.S. coast there. I think it left New York and arrived back in New York, if I remember correctly. So it goes this way around and back over and then back down to New Zealand here, Australia, and up all the way up to Japan. Around through below India, up on the east side of Africa, and then just below Europe. I was actually surprised when learning about this that it didn't actually stop in Europe. You would think that would have been part of the other than just skirting along below it here in the bottom of Spain, but no, they just decided to focus on the rest of the world with that particular route. And a little bit more on TR as a the progressive side of him. He sort of had an expansive view of the presidency, and he was really the most activist president since Lincoln. He expanded the visibility of the presidency. He really avoided getting bogged down in issues that wasn't TR's style in a lot of ways. So he didn't bother with tariffs and bank regulations and things like that. Although he did call for, as we talked about previously, the regulation of trusts and of trying to focus on that side of the progressive pushes. He did see problems in what he called the lunatic fringe of the progressive movement. He said that there's a certain level of political expediency where you have to say, okay, are we going to go all in on this moonshot type goal, or are we going to get something done? And so he was much more on it'd be better to have half a loaf than no loaf of bread at all. And so it was better to, like with trusts, you're not going to destroy the trust, but maybe you can regulate, or it's better to get some regulation rather than just accomplish absolutely nothing. And he also accomplishes a lot with executive action, almost as much as legislature. That was especially true when it came to the conservation side. We'll get to that in a second. I did mean to say that he also was involved in getting the Pure Food and Drug Act established. That was part of the concerns of the progressive era, and he was involved in that, banning false labeling, harmful preservatives. All that was involved in that effort. But one of the things he's most remembered for is his conservation side. He had always had a love for nature, and he ends up establishing the U.S. Forest Service. He created 5 national parks. The U.S. Antiquities Act established U.S. national monuments, 51 bird reserves, 150 national forests. So a heavy use of executive orders to get this done, setting aside massive sections of federal land to be protected for future generations. And so if you go back and check out that conservation video, you'll hear a bit more about that. It's because it has some complicated preservation of resources aspects to it, but he also appreciated the landscape as well. So it's an interesting aspect of the progressive side. So his second election was in 1904. One of the most interesting aspects of, or moments of his second presidency was that he actually mediated the end to the war between Russia and Japan. That was in 1905, using some of his personality to push that forward, but he was personally involved in the effort to end this war. Some people call it World War Zero was a name that was given to it, because it was fairly expansive, even though it's just these two countries. And but he successfully achieves that, and actually wins a Nobel Peace Prize for that effort. So that's another feather in the cap of a person that probably didn't need any more feathers. But he really does change the presidency significantly over the years. Much more modern president, expansionist, focused with industry, but also regulation, heavily-handed when it came to diplomacy, but also effective in some ways, and also progressive, but not so progressive that it didn't accomplish anything. So if you get a chance, check out this video. It's the last one on the list here, but it's a professor who's a specialist in this, talking about the progressive era, what's going on in there more generally, and it'll also tie in Roosevelt. So just to kind of reiterate what I'm working with here today, but I think it'll benefit you and is a good listen there. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed hearing a little bit about TR. If you ever are looking for a biography to pick up a TR biography. They do not disappoint. He is endlessly fascinating. He often makes you feel inadequate, because he's just such a active fellow, but endlessly interesting. So I hope you have a very good week, and I will talk to you soon. All right, thanks everybody.